And welcome back to another episode of the College Basketball Bracket Science Podcast. Officially 2 months and 1 day away from the college basketball season. We're getting into the meat of it. We're going to start next week with some previews, but this week we are talking our preseason rankings. We finally released the preseason rankings. All the rosters are 99.9% set. So we're going to go through 1 through 30. We rank 30 teams along with a couple honorable mentions that we just had to throw in there, had to mention their name. But we're going to go 1 through 30 today, talk about some of the most important stuff that might encourage their season, might disappoint their season, including some of their non-conference schedules. We're going to go through most of their rosters. We're also going to go through what their odds are over at Fanatics Sportsbook for us on today's episode. Before we dive into that, let's talk about some few housewarming things. First off, join our new Discord. Now, nothing has been posted in the Discord yet because we're waiting for the season. That's where we're going to end up doing our best bet show. That's where we're going to post all our early access stuff. So if you're interested in that, go down. It's in the show notes. Go click the link. Join the Discord. Again, there's going to be nothing in there, but that's going to be in preparation for our best bet show because you're going to want those to get those lines in pretty soon. We're also just going to conversate on there all day. Anyone wants to ask any questions, we can debate on there. Friendly debating, of course. We'll have some hot take arguments. I'm sure there will be, but we're going to keep it friendly. But the most important thing, those picks, we're going to have that in there for sure. I'll also be talking in discussions with some of the people in there to potentially have some guests on the show, maybe have some exciting episodes, some trivia episodes, stuff like that. More importantly than joining the Discord, make sure to subscribe to the show, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on audio. Give us a like. You can now comment on podcasts, by the way, so go comment on Apple, Spotify, comment on YouTube as well, but most importantly, subscribe and like. While you're there, follow our social media at Bracket Science. Bracket Science has 2 S's in science at the beginning of the word. So go check those out. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We're posting a bunch of good stuff on there right now in preparation, all our preseason stuff. And a new thing we've added, check out our website, bracketscience.org. Now, this one doesn't have 2 S's. It's just the word bracket, the word science.org. Early access to the content. We released our preseason rankings earlier than this. We released them on Saturday, and they actually released on Friday. We released it on Friday, and this is now Tuesday, so you could have some early access to some of the stuff like that. There's just some good, it's more blog style, so there's some good reads on there, some good information, I feel so. That's where you should start. All right, let's start getting into the show, though. Poll of the day. Let's get into the poll of the day, which is going to be a new thing we're doing. Which mid-major team had the best offseason? Your options are Grand Canyon, McNeese, or Dayton. Which one of those 3 do you believe had the best offseason? Comment it in the YouTube because you're not able to post polls on there if you're on YouTube. If you're on listening to it on audio, give us a vote on whether it's Grand Canyon, McNeese, Dayton. Now let's get into the trivia question of the day.
Trivia time!
When was the last time a non-Power 5 team finished in the top 5 at KenPom? I will give you a hint. It is not near as long ago as you might think. Again, when was the last time a non-Power 5 team, Power 6, if you want to, we'll include the Big East in that, and the Pac-12 that no longer exists, finished in the top 5 at KenPom? Not as long ago as you may think. So think about that. We'll get to that at the end of the show. Now we're going to start getting into the main part of the show. We'll get into a little bit of our breakdown, and then we'll get into some of the rankings. But before we do that, we have to give a quick shout out to Fanatics. Fanatics Sportsbook, as we mentioned, we're going to talk about some of their odds on the national championship odds, but just Fanatics in general as the official sponsor of Bracket Science. Go check Fanatics out. They have great jerseys, great gear. They create their own gear. They got Nike stuff on there. They got all the best stuff, and they're constantly running deals. That's the best part of Fanatics. Right now, you can currently get 25% off everything. Everything. A lot of jerseys. If there's a $100 jersey, get it for $75, $25 off. That's huge. They also are always running free shipping on orders over $24. So that's a great deal as well. I encourage you to go check it out. Go down in the show notes. Link is in the description. Go check it out. All right, now let's get into some Beej's breakdown.
It's time for Beej's Breakdown.
Let's talk about UConn potentially going to the Big 12. This has been swirling all over the place, all through social media, all through other college basketball podcasts. Hopefully you're hearing it from us on our college basketball podcast. UConn, if they go to the Big 12, it's obviously massive. They say it could be as early as 2026. They say it could be also football. It wouldn't be till 2031. So it's kind of just, hey, pick up the football program. Obviously, the basketball program is probably the best program in the country right now. They back-to-back national championships, got the best coach in the country. Big 12 wants them. So technically, it's up to the Big 12 majority vote, the ADs, the board members. They have to get 12 out of 16 votes for this to move forward. So we're going to see. We're not going to make any big decisions right now. We're just going to see if it goes through. UConn's been in talks with the Big 12 before. So is Gonzaga. That did not fall through. But we'll see about UConn. Speaking of Gonzaga, sad news out of Gonzaga. Steele Venters out for the season once again. They were expecting him last year to play a major role. He tore his ACL last year. And we just learned in practice that he tore his Achilles this year. Tough blow for Steele Venters, tough blow for Gonzaga. That is tough for them. And then the players, if you missed, the Players Era Festival released its games for that big MTE that is providing NIL money for all the teams playing in it, and it's $1 million for every team playing in it, and an extra $1 million for the team that wins it. So the dates are November 26th, 27th, and 30th, so it is on Feast Week. It's Thanksgiving weekend, as we figured. The venue is at MGM Grand Garden Arena, so it's in Las Vegas. Games will air on Warner Bros. So we're talking about TNT, TBS, True TV, streaming on Max, just like March Madness. So this is going to be a lot of fun. The games were released on Tuesday. The schedule is San Diego State taking on Creighton at 2 o'clock. Man, Tuesday, November 26th, 2 o'clock. Absolutely love it. San Diego State, Creighton. And then at 4:30 following that game, we got Texas A&M taking on Oregon. And then the big one, the main one, at 8 o'clock, Alabama, Houston. This will most likely be a matchup of 99% chance it'll be top 10 teams. Could even be top 5 teams. Could even be 1 versus 2. Could be a lot of different things there. It's going to be a fun game altogether. Great offense, great defense. And then the last game at 10:30, Notre Dame and Rutgers. That game will kind of fly a little bit under the radar, let's be honest. And then on Wednesday, it's just the same teams, just playing different teams. And they're in the same 8-team MTE. It's just round robin style. So those games, it's just you're just playing games. You're not playing a tournament. You're just playing games. The Wednesday schedule, San Diego State takes on Oregon at 4 o'clock Eastern Time. Creighton takes on Texas A&M. That'll be a fun one, 6:30 Eastern Time. And then Alabama takes on Rutgers at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. And then Houston, Notre Dame at 12:30 in the morning. Technically, that would be on Thanksgiving for our Eastern Time folks. For Western Time, it would obviously be 3 hours before. So you'll finish just before Thanksgiving. And then moving into Saturday's games. Saturday's games look a little bit like this. We'll have Alabama, Notre Dame at 1 o'clock. Houston, Rutgers. That could be a fun one at 3:30. Texas A&M, San Diego State at 7 o'clock. And Oregon, Creighton at 9:30. Remember, Oregon and Creighton battled off in the round of 32 last year, where Jermaine Couisnard went stupid for 42 points. But those are some of the matchups to watch. So a lot of good games. Feast week is going to be even feastier this year. Can't wait to get that going. All right, now let's get into the meat of the show. Let's get into our preseason rankings.
Power rankings.
All right, 1 through 30. We're going to talk about every single team. We're going to go through them quick. I promise this isn't going to be a long podcast. We're going to talk about their roster. We're not going to dive in too deep of why I think these teams are here. We'll talk about the roster, why I like them, why I don't. Talk about their non-conference schedules. Now, it's not all the non-conference schedules. It's just talking about some of the most important games. So some teams have 5 or 6 like real big games. Some have 1. So that's not going to take long. And then, as we mentioned it, we will talk about their odds to win the national championship. The graphics you're seeing, if you're watching on YouTube, are actually straight from our website, bracketscience.org. But it was posted on Friday, remember, so go check those out. Go check out. We have other blogs on there. Don't miss anything on there. All right, let's do it. My number one preseason overall team is the Kansas Jayhawks. They are plus 1,000 at Fanatics Sportsbook. Their projected lineup looks like DeJuan Harris, Rylan Griffin, the transfer from Alabama, A.J. Storr, the transfer from Wisconsin, K.J. Adams, and Hunter Dickinson. Hunter Dickinson will be a preseason All-American. Coming off the bench, Zeke Mayo, who has made headlines recently as Bill Self has just been talking fantastic about him. And then freshman Flory Badunga comes in at the 7 spot. Shaquille Moore, the transfer from Mississippi State, in the 8. David Coit, transfer coming in from Southern Illinois. I'm at 90% sure. Someone fact check me on that, I'm pretty sure. Coming in at number 9, and then Raquise Passmore, also a freshman, coming in as their 10th man. Remember, these are just projected lineups. They should be close. They should be I'm 99% sure this will be the starting lineup, unless Zeke Mayo takes Rylan Griffin's spot or something. But most of these are very accurate. It's a lot of studying it over on Bart Torvik, some other notable websites. Their non-conference matchups are spectacular. One of the toughest schedules in the country. So it starts off, remember, the first game of the college basketball season, or the first day of the college basketball season, is November 4th. Kansas's first real big game is November 8th against North Carolina at home at Allen Fieldhouse. That'll be fun. And then on November 12th, they have a neutral site game in the State Farm Classic that they play every year. This year they get Michigan State. Then on the 26th, they have a neutral taking on Duke. That'll be fun. On December 4th, they are away at Creighton. And then on the 8th, they are away at Missouri. Remember, they play Missouri every single year as just a little rivalry game. And then on the 14th of December, they are home versus North Carolina State, team that made the Final Four last year. So their non-conference matchups are important. There's 6 of them. The first 4 are just ridiculous in a stretch of less than a month. They will have one of the highest strength of schedules in the country. My number 2 overall team, the Alabama Crimson Tide, plus 1,200 over at Fanatics Sportsbook. Their projected lineup looks like Mark Sears, preseason All-American, potentially Player of the Year. Aiden Holloway, the transfer from Auburn. They retained Latrell Wrightsell and Grant Nelson, and then they added Cliff Amori from Rutgers, the big shot-blocking center. Coming off the bench, Chris Youngblood, the transfer from USF. He can really score the ball. He can really shoot the 3. Jaron Stevenson is back for another year. I have him as the 7th man. Freshman Darian Reed, freshman Aiden Sherrill, and freshman LeBaron Phelan coming in at 8, 9, 10. They also have a spectacular, look at that graphic on there, all the games that are notable for Alabama. There's 8 of them. So it starts off early, and we did throw them in there. It's not a power conference game, but on Veterans Day, on November 11th, they are at home versus McNeese. Remember we talked about that in the poll? McNeese had a tremendous offseason. Will Wade, he's a high major coach. He took him to one of the rare 30-win teams last year, 12 seed. Got beat by Gonzaga, but that's a spicy game. Then on the 15th, they are away versus Purdue, taking on Purdue. That'll be a fun one. On the 20th, they have a neutral site game versus Illinois. And then on November 26th is the start of the Players Era Festival, remember? So they have that neutral against Houston. Then the 27th, they have that neutral against Rutgers. And then on the 30th, that Saturday, a neutral versus Notre Dame. Then on the 4th, it doesn't stop there. You go away to North Carolina. Remember, they matched up in the Sweet 16 last year where Alabama got the best of them. Then they end on the 14th of December with a home game versus Creighton. Wow, that is a lot. That is a lot of spectacular games. They're going to be a lot of fun to watch this year, too, just scoring the ball like crazy. We'll see how Native Squad does. They're my number 2 team. At number 3, I have Houston, plus 1,700. I will say, I think the top 3 teams are locks as the 3 best teams in the country. Now, I know everyone's going to say Duke. Duke deserves to be in there. I think it's these 3, quite frankly. I think just about everyone who releases their preseason rankings will have these 3 at the top and then Duke. This is not how the AP poll is going to go. I wouldn't think. I'm 99% sure Kansas will be number 1 in the first AP poll. Duke might be number 2. Duke or Alabama will probably be number 2. Even throw UConn in there just because they're a favorite, but I don't think. And then I think following will be Alabama and Houston. So there'll be 3 of the top 4 for sure in the AP poll. But the AP poll, we've kind of noted, just has no clue really what's going on. But if you look at anyone's big picture, I think these are going to be your top 3 best teams: Houston, Alabama, and Kansas in some sort of order. Houston's plus 1,700 at Fanatics. That is great odds. The projected lineup, the transfer from Oklahoma, Milos Uzan, starting at the point guard. They also have potential All-American L.J. Cryer, the old transfer from Baylor, remember, his second year in Kelvin Sampson's season this year. Emmanuel Sharp, Javier Francis, and Jawan Roberts, all back from last year's team. They also returned Terrence Arsenault as the 6th man, injured last year, back this year. Should be a lot of fun. Malik Wilson, Joseph Tugler, Jacob McFarland, and Chase McCarthy, Their non-conference is weak. I'm not going to lie, their non-conference is not very strong. The first 2 are strong. On the 9th, they have a neutral site, November 9th, that is, a neutral site game against Auburn. On the 26th, they have a neutral site game against Alabama, Players Era Festival. The 27th, neutral site game against Notre Dame. 30th, neutral site game against Rutgers. We're going to talk about these same games. And then on the 7th of December, they have a home game versus Butler, and that's it. So the Players Era Festival is kind of what's keeping them in it, but Notre Dame and Rutgers are 2 of the bottom half teams in the Players Era Festival. They're not bad teams. They both are, obviously Rutgers for sure is really going to improve this year with Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. Notre Dame should be a lot better this year, second year under Shrewsbury. Still not the elite of the elite, you know what I mean? Auburn and Alabama, great games, but the bottom 3, it's just okay for Houston for such a top-tier program, but we'll see how they do in that non-conference schedule. At number 4, I have Gonzaga. Yes, this is a little bit controversial. I do have Gonzaga as the 4th overall seed. I have them at, well, I don't have them. Fanatics has them at plus 2,000, which is pretty high odds, bear in mind. Their projected lineup looks like this. Ryan Nemhard back for another year, so is Nolan Hickman. Michael Ajayi, the transfer from Pepperdine. Ben Gregg and Graham Ike. 5 seniors as their starting lineup. Their 6th man, Caleb Battle, who might be their leading scorer. I'm not sure he's going to come off the bench. I think he will because he's come off the bench for a while now. He might start instead of Ben Gregg, but they did really well when Ben Gregg started last year. So we'll see how they use him. Caleb Battle will probably be their leading scorer. He'll play 30-some minutes regardless, but also a senior. And then Braden Huff, Dusty Stromer, Jensen Yuck, and Emmanuel Innocente. This is a phenomenal elder team. This team has a lot of talent. They made the Sweet 16 for the 9th year in a row last year. They have a ton of talent, and their non-conference is spectacular as well. On the 10th of November, they start off with a home game versus Arizona State. Arizona State should be improved from last year. On November 18th, they go to San Diego State. Love to see them playing away games. Then on November 27th, they have a neutral versus West Virginia. We'll see how Darian DeVries can do there. On the 7th of December, they have a neutral against Kentucky. Remember that neutral site or that road game last year at Kentucky where they won. Gonzaga was a bubble team last year. People forget about that. Remember, Gonzaga was like early in the year, we're like, they need to beat Kentucky or they might not make the NCAA tournament. They did, and then they went on a heater and beat St. Mary's at St. Mary's. They lost in the championship of the WCC tournament to St. Mary's, but ended up getting that 5 seed, made the Sweet 16. But again, they have a neutral site game versus Kentucky this year. Remember last year they had that neutral site game against UConn in Seattle where they got beat. Now they have a neutral site game against UConn in Madison Square Garden, so it's kind of semi-away. But that'll be obviously a fun one. Mark Few, Dan Hurley, 2 of the best coaches in the game. And then on December 28th, they have a neutral site game against UCLA. Seems kind of random. I love it. 2 West Coast teams. My 5th ranked team is the Baylor Bears at plus 1,800 over at Fanatics Sportsbook. Their projected lineup looks like Jeremy Roach, the transfer from Duke, veteran guard. Jaden Nunn / Langston Love. I think it's going to be Jaden Nunn. We'll see. Guard VJ Edgecombe, star freshman. Bear in mind, he is going to be spectacular. Forward, Norchad Omier coming over from Miami, double machine. And then at the center position, Josh Ojenwuna, kind of just filling that role. That's what they're missing is just one huge guy because Norchad Omier plays forward, plays real big, but he's only 6'7". They had that one huge guy. You might be looking at a preseason top 3 team, but their bench is deep as well. Remember I said Langston Love. I think he's going to be the 6th man. He might enter that starting role and switch with Jaden Nunn. We'll see. 7th man, Rob Wright. 8th man, Jalen Celestine. 9th man, Jason Ace Moda. And 10th man, Omar Agbola. It's going to be a fun team. They have a lot of star power on this team. They got some stat sheet stuffers. They're important non-conference matchups. Now, their non-con has not been fully sent out, along with some of these other teams as well, by the way. Bear in mind, but a lot of them have already been sent all the way out. But their important non-conference matchups look like on the 9th of November, early in the year, remember, the 4th is the first day of games. They have a neutral site versus Arkansas. Wow, that's going to be fun. Calipari versus Scott Drew. Then on the 21st, they have a neutral site game versus Rick Pitino. That'll be fun in the St. John's. And then on December 4th, they travel to UConn, 2 stores to take on UConn. Very good coaching matchups in this one. Calipari versus Drew, Pitino versus Drew, Hurley versus Drew. A lot of fun. Remember, their non-con schedule is not fully complete yet. Only 3 games of really note right now. Now at number 6, I do have the Duke Blue Devils. As I mentioned, they will definitely be higher in the AP poll, but this is about where I have them. They're plus 1,000 co-favorites with Kansas and UConn at Fanatics Sportsbook. Their projected lineup looks like this. Tyrese Proctor coming back for another year, so is Caleb Foster. Sion James, the transfer from Tulane. Cooper Flagg, freshman sensation to say the least. And then Cayman Maluak, also a freshman sensation. Coming off the bench, their 6-man, Malik Brown, transfer from Syracuse. Isaiah Evans, star freshman as well. Mason Gillis, the transfer from Purdue. Con Nupel, star freshman. Patrick Gamba, also star freshman. So this is a deep team. You know what they're kind of missing is a point guard. Tyrese Proctor is going to be thrown into that point guard role. Him and Caleb Foster. Tyrese Proctor's a shooting guard. I can say that he's more of a shooting. He's got some decent ball handling skills. They're missing a Jeremy Roach. If Jeremy Roach was still there, this team would be, they'd be potentially preseason number 1. But we'll see. It's a lot of freshmen. It's a lot of reliance on a 17-year-old kid. Cooper Flagg's going to be spectacular. Can he win in the big moments? We will see. They're non-conference. Say what you want about John Shire. He schedules phenomenal non-conference games every single year. On the 12th of November, they have a neutral site game against Kentucky. That's in the State Farm Classic. Remember, we talked about Kansas taking on Michigan State. Now we got Kentucky versus Duke. That's the other one. That'll be a lot of fun. Now remember that home-and-home series they got with Arizona. This year they go to Arizona on November 22nd to take on Tommy Lloyd's squad. And then on the 26th, right after that, it doesn't get any easier. They got that neutral site game against Kansas we already talked about. And then on the 4th of December, they have a home game against Auburn. Yes, Bruce Pearl loves to schedule road games against big teams. I love that. I love that for Bruce Pearl. We'll see how Duke can do this season. Now, my number 7 team is UConn. Yes, I know. Is that too high, too low? Their roster isn't the 7th. I don't think it's top 10. They have the best coach, best system in the entire country. We'll see. As mentioned, they're plus 1,000 at Fanatics Sportsbook, co-favorites with Duke and Kansas. Their projected lineup looks like this. Hassan Diarra, the 6th man of the year in the Big East last year, will be forced into the starting role this year. Aiden Mahaney, transfer from St. Mary's. Liam McNeely, star freshman. Alex Caravan will be a popular pick for All-American preseason. And Samson Johnson will be thrown into that starting role this year. Either Samson Johnson or Terrace Reed. I think it'll be Samson Johnson, so I put Terrace Reed as the 6th man, the transfer from Michigan. 2 big guys. Dan Hurley obviously loves to coexist those big guys. 2 years ago, it was Sanogo and Donovan Clingan. Then last year, it rolled over to Donovan Clingan and Samson Johnson. Now it's over to Samson Johnson and Terrace Reed. We'll see if these two can be as spectacular as the previous 2. 7th man, Solomon Ball. A lot of potential there. Same goes for Jalen Stewart in the 8-man spot. Ahmed Noel, the freshman, at the 9-man. And then Isaiah Abraham at the 10-man. Their non-conference is also spectacular as usual. Some very high-up opponents. You'll notice these big brands, they'll just always get the big games. You know what I mean? On the 25th of November, they have a neutral site game versus Memphis. This is in Maui, so that'll be a lot of fun. The 4th of December, they have a home game against Baylor. Remember we talked about that home game against Baylor. Then on the 8th, right after that of December, they are away at Texas, so that'll be a lot of fun. Texas, I think, is going to be sneaky really good this year. Then on the 14th, they have a neutral site game versus Gonzaga, which we talked about. Semi-neutral because it's at Madison Square Garden. Moving on, my 8th-ranked team in the preseason is the North Carolina Tar Heels at plus 1,600. Their projected lineup, they bring back Elliot Cadeau for his sophomore season. R.J. Davis, who may be the preseason favorite for player of the year. Him or Cooper Flagg, and that's in the best rivalry in college basketball, Carolina and Duke. That should be fun. At the guard position, I also have Ian Jackson as the kind of playing the small forward. Star freshman, going to be really good. At forward, I do have Cade Tyson. This is one of those lineups where I'm not sure who's really going to start and who's not. This is what I would do. I think you have to start Cade Tyson. And then at center, I have Jalen Washington. You also have other options. You got Van Allen Lubin, who I currently have as the 7th man. He might start. Jalen Withers might even squeeze in there somewhere. I got him as the 9th man. But the 6th man, I do have Seth Trimble. Remember, Seth Trimble's back for a year. Van Allen Lubin at 7. Drake Powell, superstar freshman, at 8. And Jalen Withers as the 9th man. So that'll be a lot of fun. Their non-conference is great as well. These big brands, we're going to keep mentioning it. Starts on the 8th, where they have that away game at Kansas. Wow, at Allen Fieldhouse. Talk about a start to the season. That'll be a lot of fun. On the 25th, they have a neutral site game versus Dayton. This is in Maui or Battle for Atlantis? I think it's Maui. They get Dayton, so that'll be fun. On the 4th of December, they have that home game against Alabama. They may play the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country, and in this non-con, taking on Kansas and Alabama. They would be my top 2 teams. Then on the 17th of December, they have a neutral site game in the Jumpman Invitational, taking on Florida. Florida, a lot of firepower again this year. On the 21st of December, they also have a neutral site game against UCLA. 2 baby blue colors. That'll be a lot of fun to watch, taking on Mick Cronin's squad. At number 9, this is a little bit unpopular, been getting some talk about it already. Iowa State. Now, when I say this, you might not believe it. Iowa State is plus 2,500 to win the national championship. This is high. Like, those are good odds. Plus 2,500. We mentioned Duke's plus 1,000. That means they are giving Iowa State 2.5 to 1 odds that Duke, Kansas, or UConn win the national championship instead of Iowa State. I had them as a 3 seed in my first bracketology. I have them at 9 here, so it lines up. People didn't like that. We'll see how it goes for Iowa State. I just think they might be dealt for a little bit of regression this year. I hate that word because I don't think it's a real thing, but partially it is. I think they're just, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to say about Iowa State. I still have them in the top 10. They're going to be great. They're going to be a great team. Their projected lineup, Taman Lipsey could be an All-American. Keyshawn Gilbert could also be an All-American. Curtis Jones, Milan Monsilovic, and Deshaun Jackson. This is a good lineup. Don't get me wrong. They're going to be top 5 in defense again. Is the offense there is the question. That's kind of what the question was last year. They made the Sweet 16 last year, got beat by Illinois. It just kind of, defense just doesn't really win you championships anymore. As sad as that sounds, like, you need to be solid on defense, but you also need to have a good offense. You know, you need to be top. What is the stat? I posted a million times last year, and I can't remember. Is it top 27 in offensive efficiency? So Iowa State's going to have to get there. Coming off the bench, they have Nate Heist, Josh Jefferson, the transfer from St. Mary's, Nojas Indrisitis, and JT Rock, and Brandon Chatfield. They have a great non-conference schedule as well. Just kidding. Not really. They have a neutral site game versus Auburn on the 25th. That's a good one. Then they do have a home game against Marquette on December 4th. That'll be a lot of fun. And then they do have that rivalry game on the 12th of December away versus Iowa. Remember, they didn't have a great non-con last year. Didn't stop them from winning the Big 12. So we'll see what they do this year. My number 10 preseason ranked team. All right, before I get into number 10, I just want to note, I think the top 9 is set. I think that is going to be your top 9 teams in the country in the AP poll and just about everyone's poll. I think it's pretty set. I know John Rothstein has Arkansas in there. I don't quite frankly love that, but hey, I love bold takes, so we'll take it. But I think those are the top 9, and then it's kind of a little bit of a tier 2 after that. At number 10, it is Arizona. Arizona at plus 2,500 as well. Their projected lineup, Caleb Love is back for another year. It seems like he's been there forever. Jaden Bradley will step into a starting role, so will KJ Lewis. They also brought in Trey Townsend from Oakland, the star player last year, Horizon League Player of the Year. And then Matajas Krivas, the big 7'2" center, will be forced into the starting role. Their bench is good. They're a really deep team. They got Carter Bryant, star freshman, Toby Awaka, the transfer from Tennessee, Anthony Del Orso, the transfer from Campbell, high-scoring guy, Henry Visar, good freshman, and Emmanuel Steffen. They're 9 deep. They're 9 guys that are, I think, though, it'll be a 9-man roster. I mean, Anthony Del Orso as your 8th man is pretty good. They're deep. Can Caleb Love get back to another championship? We'll see. Arizona, Don't bet on them. You bet on them every year, and it just does not work out. Last year, they had the easiest path to the Final Four, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. Their non-conference looks like this. On the 15th of November, they have an away game at Wisconsin. That's interesting and feels kind of random, but good for them. On the 22nd, they have that home game against Duke that we already talked about. And then on the 14th of December, so fast forward a while, neutral site game, taking on UCLA. That'll be a lot of fun. Just teams that battled it out in the Pac-12 for years upon years, now playing a series together. Love to see that. At 11, now, this might have been the one where I was the most flipped. Do I put Arizona 10? Do I put Auburn 10? They're so close. I really like both of the teams. You could have put, if you're throwing Auburn in your top 10, because obviously a lot of people want to know what the top 10 is. It's really close. Auburn, same odds, plus 2,500. The lineup looks like this. J.P. Pegues, transfer from Furman. Yes, he is the guy from Furman that Kihei Clark turnover 2 years ago turned into a Furman buzzer beater three. Well, second left three. It was J.P. Pegues who made that shot. He is a elite scorer. They also brought in Miles Kelly, transfer from Georgia Tech, which was a sneaky good pickup. Not a lot of people talking about this Miles Kelly transfer. I really like it. They also bring back Denver Jones, Chaney Johnson, and Jonai Broom, who will be a popular All-American pick as well. Off the bench, Chad Baker-Mazara, he might be in that starting lineup. They're deep, man. They got like 6 or 7 guys who are like, wow, this is pretty stacked. He might be in the starting lineup somewhere. I have him as the 6th man. At the 7th man, Dylan Cardwell, Tahad Pettiford at 8, Chris Moore at the 9 man, and Ja'Kai Howard at the 10 man. Now, we know Bruce Pearl loves to schedule tough. In the non-con, he did it once again, remember, on the 9th, so real early in the year. He got that neutral site game against Houston. That'll be a lot of fun. I think it's in Texas. Don't hold me to that. I'm pretty sure I heard it's in Texas, so it will be advantage Houston, but it is a neutral site game. On the 25th, they also have a neutral site game versus Iowa State. On the 4th of December, they are away at Duke, which we talked about. So their 3 big games are all against top 10 teams, according to my rankings, and I think will be in just about every rankings. Then on the 14th, kind of a random one, a neutral site game against Ohio State, a much improved Ohio State team this year. And on the 21st, they have a neutral site game against Purdue. So a loaded non-conference schedule for Bruce Pearl, as he always does. Loves to see it. Speaking of Purdue, they are my 12th ranked team. First Big Ten team, you will note. Now, this is a little higher than most people are going to have them. And the thing is I got a bunch of hate because I did not have Braden Smith as a preseason All-American. I got a lot of hate, but I do have them number 12. They're plus 3,500, so that is high. That's a lot of odds there. Their projected lineup looks like this. Braden Smith, as mentioned, Fletcher Lawyer, also back. Miles Colvin put into the starting role. Caleb First will be into the starting role as well, and Trey Kaufman-Wren is there for another year. The reason I don't have Braden Smith, and I tried to explain this to a bunch of people, but a lot of people didn't want to hear it, I think Trey Kaufman-Wren is going to I think he's going to be breakout player of the year in all of college basketball, quite frankly. I think you might see him averaging 14, 15, and 8 or 9 points a game this year. He's going to get more touches. If you didn't watch him last year, his footwork is fantastic. Down low on the post. Whenever it was like, yeah, Zach Edey can do whatever he wants, but then you hand it over to Trey Kaufman-Wren and he does some moves, it's like, he's really good. He's a really good basketball player. I think he's going to take a huge leap this year. Looking forward to Trey Kaufman-Wren. And Braden Smith is great. Don't get me wrong, just because he's not on my preseason All-American team. He's great. He's really good. They also bring Camden Heide off the bench, Jakari Harris. Daniel Jacobson is 7'3". I have him as the 8th man. I think he's going to get some time. They just keep doing it. They keep doing it. 9th man, Raleigh Burgess. 10th man, CJ Cox. They have a good non-conference schedule as well. On November 15th, they have that home game against Alabama we talked about. Then right after that, on November 19th, they travel to Marquette. Matt Painter and Shaka Smart making something work there. Love that. Then fast forward a little bit to the 14th of December. They have a neutral site game against Texas A&M. Then on the 21st, that neutral site game against Auburn we talked about. So A&M and Auburn. Speaking of Texas A&M, I have them as my 13th ranked team in the country. Plus 5,000. That's great odds. Plus 5,000. Go bet that. Plus 5,000. What's $1 mean to you to win, what, 50 would that be? That's good odds. That is very good odds. Wade Taylor is back for another year. Seems like he's been there forever as well. Wade Taylor is one of those guys who has the firepower to make you a run to the Final Four. Just kind of like how Mark Sears did last year. Wade Taylor can do that. I love this A&M team. I loved A&M last year in the preseason. They were bad for a while. They were a borderline bubble team. They were pretty good in the net because they played a bunch of quad one games. Buzz Williams does not fear playing quad one games. As soon as SEC tournament play hit and kind of late in the SEC season, you kind of saw what was there for a while. They beat who'd they beat in the first round? Nebraska. They beat Nebraska in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Took Houston to overtime. Quite frankly, should have beat Houston, who was the number 2 overall seed. Probably should have beat them. They didn't. Ended up losing in overtime, but it just shows that this Texas A&M team has some firepower. Starting with Wade Taylor, he's got some real skill in shooting the basketball. Manny Obaseki is back as well, so is Solomon Washington, Henry Coleman, Farrell Payne rounding out the starting 5 coming off the bench. Anderson Garcia might start. I have him as 6th man right now. Zurich Phelps as the 7th man, Jace Carter as the 8th man, CJ Wiltshire as the 9th man, and George Turkson as the 10th man. As we mentioned, Buzz Williams does not fear away from scheduling non-conference games. Look at this. 8 games. Love it, Buzz Williams. Good for you. On the first day of the season, the 4th of November, they play an away game at UCF. Doesn't sound like too much. UCF will be improved this year. They brought in Mikey Williams, Benny Williams, it's an interesting team. Don't get me wrong. An away game, it's going to be an electric environment at UCF. We saw UCF beat Kansas last year at home. UCF hung in the Big 12, Johnny Dawkins has something rolling over there. Not an easy game. Bart Torvik, who has his stuff out right now, currently has A&M favored by 1 in that game. So this is a good start to the season and good for college basketball that we have a good game to watch on the first night of the season. Then they have a home game on the 15th of November versus Ohio State. Remember, they did that home and home last year. Last year, they went to Ohio State and did beat them. So good stuff there. Then on the 26th of November, they have a neutral site game against Oregon. This is the start of the Players Era Festival that we talked about. On the 27th, neutral site game against Creighton. On the 30th, neutral site game against San Diego State in the Players Era Festival. My question is this side of the Players Era Festival better than the other? A&M, Oregon, Creighton, and San Diego State just all proven really good programs, like middle of the 15 to 35 range this year outside of San Diego State. Unfortunately, their roster's bad this year. I don't know. I know the Mountain West taking some huge hits with the transfer portal because the Mountain West has been great, and then they're getting recognized and people are leaving for more money. I get it. Brian Dutcher's fantastic, but man, their roster's not very good this year. If Brian Dutcher can get this team to March Madness this year, that will be absolutely incredible. But do you take Texas A&M, Oregon, Creighton, and San Diego State, or do you take Alabama, Houston, Rutgers, and Notre Dame? 2 top heavy, 2 a little bit bottom heavy. These 4 are all solid. It's a great tournament. Love to see the Players Era Festival. I know there's some signs of it that it might not be financially feasible, which makes a lot of sense. But I hope it sticks around. It's kind of cool just to see. They can offer the best teams in the country to play each other, and that's exactly what college basketball fans want. So I don't hate it. Then right after that, it doesn't stop. On the 3rd, right after that, 4 days later, they take on Wake Forest at home. So they are in College Station to take on Wake Forest, Steve Forbes squad. Then on the 8th of December, they have a neutral site game versus Texas Tech. Nice. In-state. Love it. Then on the 14th, they have a neutral site game against Purdue, as we mentioned. So this will be a tough schedule. That's 8 games. 8 games for A&M. Good God. Now, they do have the SEC is the only conference that has an 18 only power conference, has an 18-game conference schedule. So there will be 5 other games for A&M in there, but we'll see. That's tough one. My 14th team in the nation, Texas Tech. We just talked about them, plus 8,000. They're my sleeper this year. They are my number 1 sleeper this year. I love the Texas schools this year. I don't know what it is about the state of Texas, but I'm high on all of them, except for TCU, sorry. I'm high on Texas Tech this year. Their projected lineup: Elijah Hawkins, transfer from Minnesota, great passer. Chance McMillian back. Darian Williams back. JT Toppin, the transfer from New Mexico. This was the big one. Federico in from Pitt, I think is where he was last year. And then Kevin Overton is in from Indiana State as the 6th man. I love that 1 through 6. I love that lineup. I'd put it up with just about not anyone in the country, but I have it 14th. I really like it. You got Devin Cambridge as the 7th man, Kerwin Walton as the 8th man, Christian Anderson as the 9th man, and Emily Yahoo as the 10th man. I like this lineup a lot. I like Darian Williams, JT Toppin, Federico with some size, Elijah Hawkins pass first. I think they have all the pieces. What they don't have is a good non-conference schedule. Now, the Big 12 hasn't released all of their non-conference schedules yet, so we'll see. As of right now, they have that neutral site game versus Texas A&M on December 8th, and that's it. That is it. So we'll see. My 15th ranked team in the country, Marquette at plus 5,000 according to Fanatics Sportsbook. Their projected lineup looks like this: Stevie Mitchell, Cam Jones, potential All-American, Chase Ross, David Joplin, Ben Gold, all returning pieces from last season. 6-man Sean Jones, when he's back from injury, there's some questions about that right now. Trey Norman, Demarius Owens, Royce Parham, and Al Amadou. Notice there's no transfers. They did not have one transfer. Neither did Purdue. I should have mentioned it before, but neither did Purdue, the 2 schools that had no transfers. They still have solid pieces, which I like. I think Cam Jones is going to average 20 points a game this year. I will say that. I like their pieces 1 through 6. Shaka Smart does it right. I think they're just going to be okay. And quite frankly, hot take, I thought last year they were never really a national championship contender. Thought they were always kind of just good. They ended up getting a 2 seed, but even as a 2 seed, I'm like, yeah, this team's not going to win national championship. There's just some teams where you see it and some teams you don't. We'll see if this year Cam Jones can make that huge leap that gets him in that conversation. Shaka Smart always schedules a good non-conference, though. On the 15th of November, they have an away game versus Maryland. Random. Any team who plays away games in the non-conference at big venues like Maryland, I love it. I love what that Shaka Smart does this. I think it's a lot of fun. Good for college basketball. On the 19th, we talked about this game already. They have a home game versus Purdue. On the 23rd, a neutral site game versus Georgia. On December 4th, an away game versus Iowa State. That'll be a tough environment to go into. On the 7th, a home game versus Wisconsin. Remember, they went to Wisconsin last year and got beat, really got Wisconsin on the map, and then Wisconsin fell off the map very quickly later in the year. And then on the 14th of December, they have an away game versus Dayton. Dayton traveling to Ohio to play that one. That'll be fun. The 16th team in my rankings is Arkansas. Yes, we're going to get to Arkansas now, plus 3,000. I think this is right about in the median where people will be putting them. I think they'll be ranked 15 to 20 in the preseason AP poll. Their lineup looks like this: freshman Boogie Fland, potential All-American John L. Davis, Adu Thiero, Traven Brazil, Jonas Adu, the transfer from Tennessee. Coming off the bench, Carter Knox, freshman, Zvonimir Visic, Billy Richmond, Milo Sanchez, and Kazimir Chavis. Top 8. Top 8's good. I'm bought in on the top 8. I think only 8 players will play. I think this is what the starting lineup will be. I think Adu Thiero and Traven Brazil start. We'll see. They have a good non-con, as Calipari always does. On the 9th, early in the year, remember, they have that neutral site game versus Baylor. On the 28th of November, they have a neutral site game versus Illinois. On December 3rd, they go to Miami, Florida. That'll be a fun one. On the 10th of December, they have a neutral site game versus Michigan. Dusty May, Arkansas, with John L. Davis, so coaching against John L. Davis. That'll be fun. Then had to note, on the 30th of December, Arkansas will be at home versus Oakland, who knocked off John Calipari last year. That will be a fun game. All right, moving on from one team that had a lot of turnover to another. 17th ranked team, I have Indiana at plus 5,000 according to Fanatics. Their projected lineup is Miles Rice, transfer from Washington State; Kanan Carlisle, transfer from Stanford; Mackenzie Mbako back for another year. He was supposed to be a one and done. He was not. He's back for his sophomore season. Malik Renew and Umar Ballo, transfer from Arizona. Coming off the bench, Luke Goody, transfer from Illinois; Trey Galloway back for another year, along with Gabe Cupps. Then freshman Bryson Tucker and Anthony Leal. Their non-conference sucks. It is horrible, and I hate it. I hate that this team is going to go. They should go into the Big Ten play undefeated. Their best game, their most important game, is against a team who hasn't won double-figure games in the past 3 years. Now, bear in mind, I'm setting you up. It's Louisville. It's on the 27th of November. It's a neutral site game. Louisville will be much better this year. In fact, I actually had them in a play-in game for my bracket, so I'm in on this Louisville team. I think they're going to make the tournament. It's going to be close, though. But if this is your best game and this is your only notable game, come on. Come on, you can't do this. I understand you want to put the pieces together, but I just hate when teams do this. You gotta have some sort of test to see, and then I don't know. It's not fun. No one's gonna. It's not good for fan engagement. It's not good for. I mean, people are gonna be so overhyping Indiana when they win a bunch of games because they haven't played anyone. I like this roster a lot. I think this team can be really good. I just wish you got to throw them in the fire at some point. We'll see how they do against Louisville. I would project them to beat Louisville, quite frankly. I would project them to beat a lot of teams, which is why I want to see them tested. Not being tested kind of sucks. But the Big Ten will be deep. I understand the Big Ten's a gauntlet, but I want to see Indiana get thrown in the fire. I want to see them play some good games. This team is so talented. We'll see. Sticking in the Big Ten, my 18th ranked team is UCLA at plus 5,000. Like those odds. UCLA, you'll notice teams that win the national championship are always huge brands because they have money. They've been there before. UCLA is one of those brands. You never know. Their projected lineup, Sky Clark, transfer from Louisville. Dylan Andrews, returning for another year. Kobe Johnson, transfer from USC. Tyler Bilodeau from Oregon State. And Eric Daly Jr., coming in from Oklahoma State. They also bring back Sebastian Mack, Lazar Stefanovic, Ade Mara, William Kyle, Dominic Harris. Their important non-conference matchups, not bad. Not a bad non-conference. On the 8th, so early in the year, they have a neutral site game versus New Mexico. New Mexico is actually favored by Bart Torvik to win the Mountain West right now. I had Boise State. I think Boise State's better, but they have New Mexico. Donovan Dent is going to go crazy this year, so we'll see. Fast forward over a month, they have that neutral site game on December 14th against Arizona. Then on the 21st, a week later, versus North Carolina. And then a week later after that, the 28th, a neutral site game versus Gonzaga. What day of the week is that where they just go busy? It's probably a Saturday, I would think. We'll see. Good non-conference for UCLA towards the end. Number 19, Texas. Remember I said I'm higher on Texas teams than most? Texas, plus 5,000. I like their lineup a lot. Jordan Pope, transfer from Oregon State. Trey Johnson, star freshman. Tremont Mark, transfer from Arkansas. Arthur Kaluma, coming in from Kansas State. And Caden Chendrick back for another year. Along with Shendell Weaver. Shendell Weaver as the sixth man. Thought he was going to be a starter this year, but they brought in enough pieces. I think he's going to be a sixth man again. Julian Larry in from Indiana State. And then Jason Kent, Nicholas Cody, and Zarik Onyema for this Texas roster. Should be pretty solid. Remember, we noted first game of the year. I love it. I love it, Rodney Terry. I love it, Jake Diebler. Neutral site game, first game of the year, Ohio State versus Texas. Absolutely spectacular. That will be the biggest game of the opening night. Remember, we said A&M at UCF. Texas, Ohio State is bigger. Two teams might both be ranked. Texas, I think, will be ranked. Ohio State, we'll see. Then on the 21st, they have a neutral site game versus Syracuse. On the 4th of December, they go to North Carolina State. And then on the 8th, remember, they have that home game against UConn. So pretty good non-conference. Not bad, not great, you know. They got some big programs in Ohio State, Syracuse, North Carolina State that haven't really done much outside of North Carolina State, obviously, last year. But it's solid. It's not bad. It's just, can Rodney Terry get the job done? This might be his bubble year. He's got to do it with this team. At number 20, this is going to be an unpopular one. I do have Tennessee this low. They're plus 4,000 to win it all. Their projected lineup, Zakai Ziegler, Chaz Lanier, transfer from North Florida, Darlington Dubar, transfer in as well. Igor Milicic and Felix Akpara, the transfer from Ohio State. Their bench looks like Jemai Mashak, Jordan Gainey, J.P. Estrella, Cameron Carr, Bishop Boswell. Everyone is expecting Chaz Lanier or Darlington Dubar, because they transferred up, to be the next Dalton Knecht, and I just don't see it. Dalton Knecht was a rarity. He had so much hype going into the season because you could kind of see it. We didn't expect him to be that good. He obviously ended up being phenomenal, top 3 player in the country. But we all kind of figured he had the size, he had the athleticism. Chaz Lanier and Darwin Stone-Dubar are good basketball players, don't get me wrong. They're not Dalton Connect. They are not Dalton Connect. I know everyone was excited. Tennessee fans were excited when they lost Jonas Adu, just because they thought he was a little soft. Felix Okpara is not soft, although he will block shots. I think Jonas Adu is better, quite frankly. I'm not that bought in on Tennessee this year. I love Rick Barnes. They're 8 deep. They're 8 deep, all the way with Meshack, Gainey, and Estrella. It's solid. It's a solid team. It's a top 25 team. They're going to be good on defense. We'll see. We'll see. Their non-conference looks like this. Away versus Louisville on November 9th. Neutral versus Virginia on the 21st. And then moving into December, they have a home game versus Syracuse. On the 10th, they have a neutral site game versus Miami. And on the 14th, they go to Illinois. Pretty good. Pretty good schedule. Rick Barnes is never afraid to get the job done in the non-conference schedule. We got 10 more. 10 more teams to go through. We're getting there. I promise. 10 more. As we mentioned, there was kind of that tier 1 and then I think the tier 2. I still think this is in the tier 2. I think the tier 2 goes all the way into about 26. And then we have a drop off. So any of these teams, if you move them up a little higher, a little lower, I'm hearing everyone out. At 21, I have Xavier, plus 6,000. Their projected lineup looks like this. Davion McKnight, Dante Maddox, Ryan Conwell, transfer from Indiana State, may pop off like crazy. Zach Fremantle is back. People forget how good Zach Fremantle is. It should be repeated. He might, if he stays healthy, he's a double-double machine, could be in the first team Big East all category. And then Basile Traore rounding out the starting 5. Coming off the bench, Jerome Hunter, John Hughley, Roddy Anderson, Dalen Swan, Marcus Foster. I think this year Sean Miller gets back in the tournament. We're going to talk a lot about Xavier come our best bet show, so I'll save some of that for that. Their non-conference is nothing spectacular. On the 16th of November, they have a home game versus Wake Forest. On the 25th of November, they have a neutral site game versus South Carolina, who should be a little bit down this year, I would think. On the 5th of December, they go to TCU. And on the 14th of December, they have an away game versus Cincinnati, the crosstown shootout, which is always entertaining. All right, moving on to the 22nd ranked team. I have the Kentucky Wildcats, and they are plus 3,500 because their name's Kentucky. I like this roster. A lot of people don't like this roster. I like it. Projected lineup: Lamont Butler, Kerr Kriisa, Jackson Robinson, Andrew Carr, Amari Williams. Not even going to name off the transfers because the whole team's transfers. Six-man, Kobe Brea, best shooter in the country. Brandon Garrison as the 7th man. Otega Owe as the 8th man. And then freshman Colin Chandler and freshman Travis Perry rounding out the lineup at 9 and 10. They're important non-conference matchups. They always schedule good in the non-conference, as they should. They're one of the biggest brands, if not the biggest brand in the country. On the 12th, they have that neutral site game versus Duke in the State Farm Classic, November 12th. Fast forward a little bit to December. December 3rd, they have an away game at Clemson. On the 7th, they have that neutral site game versus Gonzaga. On the 14th, they have a home game versus Louisville. And then on the 21st, they have a neutral site game versus Ohio State. That'll be a lot of fun. Moving on, sticking in the SEC, though, I've had a lot of questions about this team, and they're kind of ranked about the same place I had them last year, all throughout the season. So, 23rd ranked Florida Gators at plus 5,500. Their projected lineup looks like this: Walter Clayton Jr., potential All-American; Will Richard, Elijah Martin, the transfer from Florida Atlantic; Sam Alexis and Alex Condon. On the bench, Thomas Hall, Ruben Chanelu, Denzel Aberdeen, Oliver Rue, who is 7'9", bear in mind, and Isaiah Brown. This team is huge. Sam Alexis, Alex Condon, Thomas Hall, Chinyelo, Oliver Rue. This team is massive. They have some big guys. Their guards are what kind of sticks out when it comes to their starting lineup with Walter Clayton, Will Richard, and Elijah Martin. They're guard heavy. But then when you got all this size coming off the bench, it's an interesting team, which is very scary. Very scary under Todd Golden. Their non-con looks like this. To start off the season, they also have a good game, which I love to see. Neutral site game versus USF. Now, Florida will be heavily favored in that game, but remember what USF did last year? They were ranked at the end of the year in the AP poll. Amir Abdul-Rahim is a terrific coach, so that's a fun one, in-state matchup. They stay in-state for a while. In fact, until the 15th of November, where they have an away game versus Florida State. Then on the 28th, they have a neutral site game versus Wake Forest. On the 4th of December, they have a home game versus Virginia. Then on the 14th, they have a neutral site game versus Arizona State. Then on December 17th, they have that neutral site game versus North Carolina in the Jumpman. So that'll be a lot of fun. Good non-conference schedule, good team. I'm excited to see what Florida can do this year. Like last year, I mentioned this to someone. If Florida, remember that game of Florida-Colorado where KJ Simpson hit a shot to win the game for Colorado, 10-7. If Florida wins that game, I think Florida matches up a little better with Marquette. If they beat Marquette, then you get an 11 seed. You get an 11-seeded North Carolina State. Marquette kind of just didn't match up with them. Florida could have with their firepower. If Florida beats NC State, you're in the Elite Eight taking on a Duke team, which was not Elite Eight good, quite frankly. You might be talking about Florida in the Final Four last year, just one shot, that KJ Simpson shot. So this team has all the upside in the world. I think they're going to be similar this year as they were last year, just kind of hovering around that 20 to 25 range, can climb up into 15, might go unranked for one. But will be a popular pick to make a run in March, so we'll see about that. At 24, I have Rick Pitino's St. John's. The Johnnies coming in at plus 4,500 on Fanatics Sportsbook. Their projected lineup looks like this. Devin Smith, transfer from Utah, lightning fast. Kadari Richmond, preseason potential All-American. Coming in from Seton Hall, Simeon Wilcher. Aaron Scott coming in from North Texas. Vincent Iwuchukwu coming in from USC. They also on the bench have R.J. Lewis, Jaden Glover, Zubi Ejiofor, Brady Dunlap, and Kamen Maker. So this is a pretty solid roster. Their guards are what stands out, but even their front court is pretty good as well. Their non-conference matchups are like this. On the 17th, they have a home game versus New Mexico. Right after that, they have that neutral site game against Baylor on the 21st. And then on the 24th, neutral site game against Georgia. And then on December 7th, they have a home game versus Kansas State. So their non-con is not that strong, but the Big East play should be a little bit more feisty this year than it was last year, because there was one top dog. I don't know if you heard of them, but they were pretty good last year, named UConn. My last team rounding out the top 25 is Illinois. They are plus 7,000 to win it all at Fanatics Sportsbook. Their lineup looks like this. Kylan Boswell, Ty Rogers, Trey White, Ben Humikris, Kerry Booth. Coming off the bench, Will Riley will be a star freshman. Same goes for Tomislav Ivisic, Zvonimir Ivisic's brother, coming in as the 7th man, and then as the 8th man, Kasparis. Jekanusius, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I know he's really good. He's a really good freshman as well. 9th man, Morez Johnson, and 10th man, Jake Davis. It's a deep team. I actually had them unranked for a while, but I like their depth. I don't really see any star power unless Ben Humikris goes off this year. We'll see. I like Kerry Booth, transfer from Notre Dame. Not bad. I'm not that high on Kylan Boswell, quite frankly. Hopefully he can turn into like a really good pass-first point guard. I think that's kind of what they need. But I also trust Brad Underwood with my life. So Illinois' floor is always fairly high. Their important non-conference matchups look like this. On the 20th of November, they have that neutral site game against Alabama. Then on the 28th, a week and a day later, they have a neutral site game versus Arkansas. On the 14th of December, they have a home game versus Tennessee. Then on the 22nd of December, they have a neutral site game versus Missouri. Missouri should be a lot better this year, I would hope and pray. All right, this is where it drops off. That's my tier 2. It's pretty easy. 1 through 10, then 10 through 25. Just kind of added up that way. Next, I would say it's tier 3 right after that. Starting with a few Ohio teams, let's start at 26 with Cincinnati at plus 6,000. This is Cincinnati's most anticipated season in a while. They have a pretty good roster. They have a good coach. This is what their lineup looks like. Day Thomas, Simus Lakushis, Dan Skillings, Dylan Mitchell, the transfer from Texas, and Aris Bandanago. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good starting lineup. 6-man Jizzle James. Jizzle James might sprinkle into that starting lineup and throw someone else down. I don't know who. That's a good problem to have. This team's got 6 really solid pieces, really good guard play. Aris Bandayago, is 7'1", so they have some size. Connor Hickman coming off the bench as the 7th man. Tyler Betsy, 8. CJ Frederick as the 9th man, and Rayvon Griffith as the 10th man. Their non-conference schedule is not very good. On December 3rd, yes, we're starting way in December. Remember, Big 12 hasn't released it all, so it might get better. They are away at Villanova, so we'll see what they can do against Kyle Neptune's squad. Then on the 14th and 20th, these are some fun ones. The 14th of December, they're at home versus Xavier in that crosstown shootout. Then they stay here for a little bit. And then on the 20th, they have a neutral site game versus Dayton. So a couple teams within a couple, not even hours of each other, just a couple blocks of each other, about 30 minutes away from Dayton, probably 15 minutes away from Xavier. So that'll be fun. Fun matchups there, but pretty weak non-com. Sticking in Ohio, let's keep talking about Ohio. 27, I do have Ohio State. Now, I had them up in the teens at one point. I like it. I like the upside. We'll see. I really like Jake Diebler. We're going to see what they do going forward. They're plus 6,000 according to Fanatics Sportsbook. Now, the reason I'm optimistic about Ohio State is because of Bruce Thornton. Bruce Thornton might be the most underrated basketball player in the country. Not a lot of people knew about him last year. He's spectacular. He'll be the point guard of the squad this year. Michi Johnson is back for another term in Ohio State. He started his career there, went to South Carolina, made even a bigger name of himself, and is now back at Ohio State. They also brought in Micah Parrish from San Diego State, proven winner. Sean Stewart, a previous Duke Blue Devil, and Aaron Bradshaw, a previous Kentucky Wildcat. So a lot of talent there. Their 6th man will be Devin Royal. Quez Glover, the transfer in from Samford. Evan Mahaffey coming off the bench as the 8th man. Junai Mobley as the 9th man. And Tayson Chapman as the 10th man. It's a good team. 1 through 10 is pretty solid. They're pretty deep. One person is going to have to really step up and be that piece where it's just, that's the guy, that's the Terrence Shannon Jr., that's the Zach Edey, that's the Dalton Connect for this team to be truly elite. Will it be Sean Stewart? Will it be Aaron Bradshaw? Can Michi Johnson really get much better? Now, Bruce Thornton is spectacular. Don't get me wrong. I think Bruce Thornton's the best player on this team. Don't get me wrong. Can he elevate his game to All-American level to get this team to the next level? We'll see. I like this roster. I like Jake Diebler. We'll see what he can do in year 1. Their non-con looks like this. We talked about their game with Texas on November 4th, first day of the year. It's a neutral site game. Then on the 15th, they travel to Texas A&M. On November 29th, they have a home game versus Pitt. On December 14th, they have a neutral site game versus Auburn. And then on the 21st, they have that neutral site game versus Kentucky. Fun. Good non-con. Really like it. 5 good teams. 5 probably tournament teams. 5 teams I have in the tournament right now. Jake Diebler, not afraid to schedule. Love to see it. At 28, only 3 more teams. Bear with me. At 28, Kansas State at plus 9,000. Their projected lineup looks like this. Doug McDaniel, transfer from Michigan. Brendan Housen, transfer from Villanova. Achor, transfer from Samford. Coleman Hawkins, transfer from Illinois. And Ugana Onyenso, transfer from Kentucky. Yes, it is the team of transfers. Doug McDaniel could be spectacular. By the way, keep the name Doug McDaniel in front of you. Remember Marquise Noel? Doug McDaniel is kind of similar to Marquise Noel. Coming off the bench, C.J. Jones as the 6th man, David Gusan as the 7th man, Max Jones as the 8th man, David Castillo as the 10th man. Why did I skip the 9th man? Not sure. 9th man, Moby. I guess it's because if you see the graphic on YouTube, that's his last name. I'm not quite sure who it is. Ikegwon Wiruka. I tried. He's the 9th man. Their non-conference schedule is incredibly, and I mean incredibly, weak. On the 14th of November, they have a home game versus LSU, and on the 7th of December, they have an away game versus St. John's. Now, see, that's premature. I said that. I shouldn't have said that because, like I said, a lot of these schools haven't released their non-conference schedules yet, but it's pretty known. It's pretty known, and this is pretty rough. At 29, you notice I haven't said the Creighton Blue Jays. Well, I got them at 29. 29 plus 4,000. Their odds are they're one of the top 15 favorites or so, but I'm not too bought in on this Creighton team. I've gotten a lot of hate about it, but I love Creighton, quite frankly. I love them as a school. I loved them last year. They were my guys last year. We'll see this year. Their lineup looks like this. Stephen Ashworth back for another year. Pop Isaacs, the transfer from Texas Tech. Jemiah Neal, the transfer from Arizona State. Mason Miller back, and Ryan Kalkbrenner, potential All-American at center. My reasoning was this. Now we'll start with this because first off, we'll talk about the starting lineup first. Stephen Ashworth was great at his role last year as the fourth guy. They had the big three with Baylor Shireman, Trey Alexander, and Ryan Kalkbrenner, right? And then Stephen Ashworth was just kind of that feisty little guy who just ran around knocking down threes. This year he's going to have the ball in his hand a lot more because there is no Baylor Shireman. There is no Trey Alexander. Last year, they utilized the pick and roll with Kalkbrenner late in the year with Trey Alexander and Shireman and just started feeding Stephen Ashworth for some deep threes, which I loved. We're going to see how Stephen Ashworth does when he's the ball handler in the pick and roll this year. Pop Isaacs coming in. He's a fan favorite at Texas Tech. He was one of the least efficient basketball players in all of Power 5 Division I last year. It wasn't good. He's supposed to step into this Trey Alexander role. He's not as good as Trey Alexander. Quite frankly, not even close to as good. Jemiah Neal is solid, but is he the star? Is he the star? And Mason Miller just basically rounds out the five. Mason Miller, we would talk about last year. How many games could someone score 0 points as a starter in college basketball? It happened a lot last year for Mason Miller. So this lineup, I'm just a little hesitant. I had Ryan Kalkbrenner as a first-team preseason All-American. I think he's set up for that because I don't really like the pieces around him that much. Now, I still have him ranked 29. I have him as an 8 seed in my bracketology, which got a lot of hate. But we'll see. I'm not too thrilled about what this team's going to do. I love Greg McDermott. I think he's a great coach. Their floor is always high. I think Creighton fans are in for a little bit of disappointment this year. Coming off the bench, they got 6-man Isaac Trout, 7th man Fedor Zujic, who may be really good. I will give them that. Fedor Zujic may be really good. Foreign guy, he might be solid. Then they got the rest filled up with freshmen. Jackson McAndrew as the 8th man, Larry Johnson as the 9th man, Ty Davis as the 10th man. A lot of freshmen. Good freshman class. I'm not bought in about this transfer class. Now they have a good non-con because they're in the players era as well. On the 22nd, they start off with a home game versus Nebraska, then moving into the players era. Got that neutral site game on the 26th versus San Diego State, the 27th neutral site versus A&M, the 30th neutral site game versus Oregon. Then on the 4th of December, they got that home game versus Kansas. Wow, that place is going to be rocking, home game against Kansas. Then on the 7th of December, a home game versus UNLV. UNLV should be improved this year. Not a lot of people talking about UNLV. They got a chance to win the Mountain West this year. On the 14th of December, an away game versus Alabama. That'll be tough. That'll be a tough one. The final team in my rankings, I will be honest, it came down to 3 teams. It came down to BYU, Grand Canyon, and Virginia. I ended on Virginia. I am higher on Virginia than a lot of people. I put them as one of my most underrated teams going into this year. A lot of people have the sour taste in their mouth from last year. I get it. They should. It was ugly. But they're plus 10,000 right now at Fanatics Sportsbook to win the national championship. I'm not saying they're going to win the national championship, but I think they're going to be very improved from last year. Their projected lineup looks like this. Day-Day Ames transferring in. Isaac McNeely back for another year. He was kind of the lone bright spot in the offense last year, quite frankly, except for when he missed that free throw, which allowed Aiden O'Connell to bank in a 3 and knock off Virginia in the ACC tournament, and then eventually keep winning games for NC State, which led him all the way to the Final Four. Isaac McNeely was the guy who let that happen by missing a free throw. He's like a 90% free throw shooter, too. They also brought in Jalen Worley from Florida State, TJ Power coming in from Duke, and then Blake Buchanan rounds out the starting 5 for me. Their 6-man, I have Elijah Saunders, who might start. I have him as the 6-man. Andrew Rohde, Tane Murray, Dante Harris, Jacob Coffey. They fill out the rest of the roster. I like this team. Last year, they were good defensively. I know it was horrible to watch because they were so bad offensively, but they still got in the tournament strictly by defense. They would just play their style, and they got it. So now I think TJ Power can really score the ball. McNeely can score. Day-Day Ames is fast. He can really score. Jalen Worley, Elijah Saunders. They got some guys who can put the ball in the hoop, and I think with Tony Bennett as your coach and under this system, I think they'll end up being a top 7 seed in March Madness this year. I really do believe that. Their important non-conference matchups, on the 15th of November, they got a neutral site game versus Villanova. On the 21st, they have a neutral site game versus Tennessee. Then moving into December, on December 4th, they have an away game at Florida. And then on the 18th of December, they have a home game versus Memphis, Penny Hardaway squad, with high hopes this year. We made it. Top 30 teams. Those are the top 30. Leave me some hate. Whatever you think. You think some of these other teams, I got it pulled up on YouTube. The strongly considered teams deserve to be in. I'll go through those real quick. As I mentioned already, Grand Canyon, they're my favorite mid-major team this year. BYU, I think, is going to be good under Kevin Miller. Kevin Miller is sneakily having an incredible offseason. Did throw Rutgers in there. They got the 2 freshmen, but do they have the rest of the pieces? I don't know. Memphis, we just mentioned Penny Hardaway squad. They got some good pieces out of the transfer portal. Wake Forest, which we talked about a lot today in some of their games they're playing. Michigan State. Michigan State will be probably ranked in the top 25. I don't like their roster this year, quite frankly, if I'm just being honest. Michigan also considered Oregon, who I like this year and I think has sneaky upside. Maryland, also in the Big Ten. Ole Miss had a good transfer portal. Mississippi State brings back some guys, but I think they were overrated last year. Then I did throw Miami in there. Miami's a question mark right now. I will be so honest. Miami is a question mark. That is it. That's all the teams we're going to talk about today. Let's dive back into that trivia question that we had at the beginning of the episode. I'll remind you if you forgot it. When was the last time a non-Power 5 team finished in the top 5 at KenPom? Think about it for a second. It's earlier than you think, or it's more recent than you think. All right, the answer is Houston. In 2023, they were in the American. Remember that? A little bit of a trick question. They finished second in KenPom. They had that 1 seed. They were the second overall seed 2 years in a row. They had, remember they had Marcus Sasser, but that was a good team. But they were in the American. Remember, they just transferred to the Big 12 last year. Did you get it? That'd be pretty good. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Next week starts conference previews. We're going to go in alphabetical order. We'll go ACC, Big 12, Big East, Big 10, SEC, all down the list. We're going to talk about a lot. We're going to talk about our all-conference teams. We're going to talk about the power rankings all the way through. Remember to vote on that poll before you leave. Which mid-major had the best offseason? Grand Canyon, McNeese, Dayton. Posted below. Results will be posted on social media, on my social medias. So go check those out at Bracket Science, 2 S's. We'll also talk about it at the intro of our next show. Reminder to join the Discord. Nothing's going to be posted in there, but just prepare for the season. It won't bother you. It's just another app on your phone. Like this video, like old videos, subscribe, turn on the post notifications so you know. Follow those social medias. Check out the website, bracketscience.org. Take care. Have a nice rest of your day. See you later. See you next week.